Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is hypervigilance. Many of us have experienced trauma, and in the course of persistent trauma or abuse, have cultivated a skill and an ability to be hypervigilant, to be very, very conscious and aware of any signs of danger so that we can adapt our behavior and to protect us in these potentially dangerous situations. And we're going to talk about that dynamic today and some of the implications of it and how maybe we can move to a place of inner safety to allow us to transform that hypervigilance into observation that's not as charged with anxiety and fear. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, and bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, energizing, electrifying all your cells and your molecules and your electrons and creating this brilliant beam of light from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension and stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together and very, very softly rub your fingers against your palms to feel the deliciousness of that sensation and to bring yourselves present right here, right now, into these remarkable bodies that enable us to experience life. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Hypervigilance. So experiencing physical or emotional abuse, particularly that kind of trauma. Good morning, Susan. Welcome, welcome. Good to have you here. I'm not sure if that's a spam or if you have something that you'd like to contribute to participate. But you are welcome. Welcome. It's great to be here with you guys this morning. So in environments where perhaps there's an alcoholic parent or an emotionally abusive parent or a physically abusive parent, I mean, this kind of patterning starts really young, where we learn to monitor the environment really carefully, to be really attuned to micro signals of emotion. Good morning, Rosalind. So good to have you joining us this morning. We're talking about hypervigilance and how it's an acquired skill for survival. And it also feeds our ability to observe and how we might be able to transition from this high anxiety, fear-based, survival-based mindset into a more neutral kind of observer, and utilize those skills that we develop. So when you're in an environment where you're dealing with a volatile personality, it's really important. It's a survival skill to be able to monitor what's going on, what the emotional atmosphere is, what the micro signals are that there may be danger, or when there's a switch, and to be alert to that. And what happens is that in these situations, when there's danger, we're often on high alert, like fight or flight right there, in response to our environmental stimulus, because those environments can be dangerous. And so we develop all kinds of coping mechanisms, one of which is this hypervigilance, this awareness. And along with hypervigilance is this adrenaline and cortisol thing that's going on in your body where you're ready, fight or flight. You're in this constant state of tension, which can be really damaging to our bodies. As we evolve, as we hopefully are removed from that situational danger, hopefully we can evolve beyond it. However, it is a neurological, physiological, psychological pattern that these states can get readily triggered. And a response to a recognition that there's danger in the environment. Good morning, Tori. So glad to have you here with us this morning. A response to danger in the environment, it's not always fight, it's not always flight, it may be adapt. So I think that in order, another or a parallel skill that many people develop who have been in these volatile environments is an ability to be something of a chameleon, an ability to shift demeanor to accommodate the situation as a self-preservation device, as a way to protect ourselves. We learn to shift our behavior to fulfill the need of the moment. And this is a very interesting pattern when we look at our sense of identity. If we can shift into different behaviors in different modes in different circumstances, does that make us responsive? Is it or are we still being true to ourselves? Like if I'm behaving in a way to be able to fit in or to be able to in some way protect myself, is that in alignment with my core self? Is that authentic behavior? So thank you, Tori. I think this is all very interesting because so many of us have grown up in toxic environments and have the skills and scars that result from that kind of situational training ground. And I think that the skills that are developed out of self-preservation in those kinds of environments can be really, really powerful skills when we are able to evolve beyond the fear and defense that originally drove them. When we can move into a place of safety. And when I talk about safety, first of all, being out of a physically threatening environment and ideally being out of an emotionally threatening environment. But the ultimate safety comes from within, comes from an alignment and a reliance on self and our ability to be responsive to the messages from our heart and soul, to be able to be in tune with that, to give us guidance, to allow us to recognize situations that might best be avoided. And I think that this idea of pattern and frequency is a really fascinating topic where when we are growing up in a volatile environment, emotionally, or abusive environment, emotionally, physically, sexually, what happens is that we are entrained, we are patterned to deal with those situations. And when love is conditional, it becomes something. I don't know the names of the experiments or the patterning that this works with, is technically called, but like intermittent reward is a way to create kind of an addictive behavior. You know, if you look at gambling, you get this big reward, but it's not always predictable. So it's intermittent. So you keep trying to get that big hit, and it comes periodically. And then that gives you the endorphin rush that that solidifies that kind of behavior. Good morning, Elaine. Good to have you here with us this morning. So good to see you. So we're talking about hypervigilance and the whole dynamic behind living in a volatile environment. And so what happens in that kind of environment where we're getting intermittent reward, intermittent punishment, it makes us want to calibrate ourselves or turn ourselves into whatever or utilize whatever behavior is going to be most rewarding in that given situation or least dangerous, right? So that's where the chameleon behavior comes in, where we try to adapt and we try to please and we try to elicit the desired response, you know, rather than the stick. We try to elicit the carrot by conceding to certain behaviors or certain emotional profiles to get the approval. You know, we'll turn ourselves inside out to try and win the approval or to make some kind of safety, some kind of constancy out of something that feels very much outside of our control. So we're trying to wrest some kind of control or some kind of predictability, some kind of normalcy in a situation where we notice that if we behave this way, then we get love or we get approval or we get acknowledgement. And I just find it incredibly interesting to see how we adapt by creating these often ultimately dysfunctional behaviors. Tori says, hugs, your words are hitting me head on. I hope you're doing well. Please take care. Thank you, Tori. I hope that there's some insight in this, because what happens is we end up blaming ourselves coming out of these environments. And this is a really critical thing to recognize, that it's a pattern behavior of self-blame. Like when we're punished for being how we're being, we're told that we're screwing up, that we're doing something wrong, that we are a failure over and over and over again. Then when these patterns repeat later in life, that failure mechanism, that sense of self-blame and shame is part of that embedded, imbued dynamic where as the object of these emotional manipulations and physical manipulations and sexual manipulations, we are often made to be the responsible party too. Like it's our fault that somebody got angry. It's our fault that somebody got abusive. And therefore, if it's our fault, we did something wrong. We need to do something to change it. We screwed up. And so there's this horrific self-blame and shame that is a part of this fundamental, really complex, deeply devastating dynamic. Good morning, Lisa. So good to have you here with us this morning. We're talking about hypervigilance and the behaviors and the dynamic that are part of an outgrowth of an abusive environment, whether it's emotionally or physically or sexually. That there is this assumption, like it's a whole mechanism. There's this assumption of guilt and shame and blame and responsibility. So if you're angry, it's my fault. And if you're beating me up, it's my fault. If you're sexually abusing me, it's my fault. And I have to manipulate myself, my being, my expression to try to prevent or mitigate the undesired behavior on your part. So I have to turn myself inside out to become something that is going to keep me safe in this very volatile and unsafe environment that is going to, it's a survival mechanism. And I think, it's such a tangled web. It's such a complex interweaving of dynamics that carry into life. And what happens in that kind of situation, until we are able to heal enough to evolve to a place where we can have our own inner alignment and clarity and a sense of safety and wholeness, until we're able to get to that place, and then these skills can transfer into observational capabilities and opportunities for compassion, rather than this whole behavioral matrix that entraps us and ensnares us into these really devastating behaviors that perpetuate the same kind of dynamic over and over again. When we become sovereign, that is the key to breaking free of it. That is the key to clearing that matrix and being able to utilize that strong power of observation that has been cultivated initially out of pain, but still there is incredible power in it. Good morning, Bernadette, and good morning, Elaine. So Elaine says there are many false forms of survival skills: seeking love and approval, conditioned response caused from the breaking down in the childhood, usually trauma. That's exactly what we're talking about. These are very powerful experiences and come as part of the deep awakening within. Exactly. That's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about how as children, we are conditioned to develop these responses that help us survive in a very volatile and dangerous environment, emotionally, physically, sexually. And then as adults, we hopefully have the awareness and the skill and the commitment and the help to move away from needing that survival again by finding our own sovereignty, by connecting to our own knowing, by building a trust and reliance on the knowing that we know. This is one thing that comes up in coaching sessions with clients, is to know what we know. And I don't mean from our head. What there is a deep gut knowing, there is a heart knowing that we can connect to, that allows us to recognize danger. And the thing is, unfortunately, with so many of these patterns, there's a frequency that without that that internal alignment and self-trust, without that inner alert system, we're trained to override our own knowing. This is something that happens in this kind of toxic environment, is that we're told that we don't know. We're told over and over that our instincts are wrong. And what happens is we look externally more than internally for the cues, because the danger is coming from the outside. So it makes total sense. You know, we're always watching outside, and we're always calibrating to outside rather than to what does our heart and soul say. And that becomes a patterned response. So it makes sense that we're so attuned to that we're trying to resolve that, right? We're trying to resolve these issues, and therefore we look for, not consciously, but we look for situations and people that are going to replicate that dynamic in some capacity, so that hopefully we get to heal it, you know, so that we can complete it until we get to that place of sovereignty. That place of sovereignty is where we then can move from, hopefully, from the fear to choice. And that comes to your input, Bernadette. Bernadette says, as an adult, we also have a choice of the behaviors. The thing is that these patterns are so deeply entrenched that until they are untangled, as conscious as we believe ourselves to be, we often end up repeating the same thing. And then we look at, oh my God, I've done it again. It's the same thing. What's wrong with me? And it goes back into the whole spiral, because I screwed up. Why is it that I screwed up? Because that's what I've been trained to believe, is that it's all my fault. And what might be my responsibility is ultimately clearing that foundational pattern. But until we do, we keep attracting the same thing. And seriously, and at least this is my hypothesis, is that when we stop looking, so when we look outside in the world, we see something that's familiar, right? We see the ability or the capacity for to get love, to resolve that initial wound, right? Maybe not consciously, but that's why we attract people that have similar patterns, because we see the opportunity on some level to heal that original wound. We also can recognize, oh, that's what love is. That's what I've been taught love is, right? So when we've been indoctrinated to a toxic version of love, and that's what our definition of love is, that's what we know as love, then that's what we recognize, that's what we pull to ourselves. And again, the cure, so to speak, is this wholeness that we get to cultivate in ourselves, to recognize, I don't need to look outward for that. What I need first for the source of love first is me. And when I find myself in a place of self-acceptance and self-love and self-forgiveness and release from the shame and release from the blame, when we get to that place of beingness, that's when we have the freedom. That's when we have the freedom from these patterns. That's when we have the ability to utilize the skills. It's a huge and amazing, brilliant skill to be able to notice all the things, the micro signals around you. So one of the things that makes me effective in my coaching practice is that I see those micro signals. I mean, like they're screams and shouts to me, whereas other people don't even see them at all. Like I can see when there's a shift in skin moisture, or I can see when someone's a little flushed. I can see when a breathing pattern changes. I can see when somebody has a twitch. These things that other people don't recognize. And that's because I grew up learning to be looking for the signs. And now those signs are no longer signs of danger. Those are signs that allow me to have an insight into something going on for the other person that I'm interacting with. So these are skills. They're skills, and they can be valued as skills when we can free ourselves from the anxiety and the fear and the separation that were foundational to those skills. So anyway, that's it for this morning. Kind of an abrupt stop there, but I've got to go. And I just so appreciate you guys joining me for these morning conversations. And I just want to say thank you so much for engaging with me and being a part of my own evolution as we discuss these things. And I just hope that that our conversations make a difference for you. So I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live each weekday morning here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I just have to tell you what a joy it is to spend time with you. And I encourage you to check out all the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network and Enlightened World Living and EWN, One with the Earth. And until next time, so much love to you.